Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we just got to watch an entire Ohio State football practice for the first and very, very, very likely last time this fall. But it was good. We had, I think we came away with a lot more information than we started the practice with, but not everything we were necessarily hoping to learn due to the, general bloody-mindedness of the universe and some circumstances. But we'll get into that in just a few minutes.
Yeah, so we watched the entire practice. Then we talked with the running backs, Anthony Alford, and then Mayan Williams came over and talked to us for a little bit. So it gives you an idea. It's been a pretty full day. Got here around 9 o'clock. It is now currently a little past noon. So this is a full day for a journalist. Like this is at least 14 hours for a regular person. Mm-hmm. So just appreciate what we're doing for everybody. And then we're adding to the day. So
and it's also like 75 degrees, so it's pretty hot.
And we are in the shade.
Mm-hmm.
So
true.
It's a rough day here on the Ohio State football campus, or just the Ohio State campus.
I think they like to pretend there's some learning that goes on elsewhere as well, but we're not here to talk about that.
Right, no, definitely not.
We are not here to play school.
No, let's talk about football, where you go to an Ohio State football practice, and because we are our football intelligence is lower than the average football person, you just want to see the quarterbacks. You want to see what's shiny. And so, yeah, we were interested in seeing CJ Stroud today and seeing how he looked as the guy out in front. And what we got to see today was CJ Stroud taking a few of the reps, but then Kyle McCord and Jack Miller getting the rest, and Quinn Ewers getting a few reps here and there, which was a little bit disappointing. Especially, I'm sure Big Ten Network was here today. I'm sure they're not thrilled, but it wasn't any injury or anything. Ryan Day came out and explained that it was just a load management thing. Somebody asked, "Hey, was this? Did you time this to coincide with the Big Ten Network showing up?" And he said no. But Tom, do you believe that? Because remember, Ohio State and the Big Ten were feuding last year, if you will. Mm-hmm. Do you think Ryan Day would do this to the network of the conference that he was feuding with last year?
How can I answer this question without answering this question? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, what Ryan Day said was like he wishes he had the wherewithal to plan this stuff out. Now, this sort of goes to the question: do I believe that it's a coincidence that all the quarterback drills are 120 yards from us and facing the other direction? Like, I mean, there's lots of fields here they could do those things on. So it kind of all goes back to that question, which Tony, I've never had a firm answer on that. So I'm not sure what to think.
But so we did get to see the quarterbacks, the rest of the quarterbacks quite a bit. I thought Jack Miller was up and down, had some nice throws, had a really nice back shoulder to maybe Jaden Ballard, or maybe, perhaps, but it was a nice catch in almost double coverage. Kyle McCord thought looked fine. Quinn Ewers, I shot some video. I actually should upload those to YouTube here eventually. But they were throwing some deep balls. Quinn Ewers is not quite there yet in terms of, guys were having to wait on the ball a little bit, which are you ready to move on past? Is this the end of the Quinn Ewers era based on what he showed today?
I think there may be a little bit of an adjustment period, which normally, boy, the cicadas are real loud. Weird. Thank you.
That's a new one.
Thank you for your subscription and understanding what the bit on this podcast is. I think there's probably a little bit of an adjustment, which we probably typically don't see because it's happening during winter throwing and that kind of stuff, where you go from quarterback who's used to throwing for high school kids to quarterback who's now throwing for Ohio State wide receivers who run faster than high school kids do. And so you're sort of adjusting in my head. If I'm throwing the ball 40 yards, I have to release it at this point, at this angle, with this, velocity on it. And now you have to adjust that clock. It's like moving to, hitting off of a faster pitcher in baseball. It's like, well, okay, you got to start your swing a little sooner. Okay, you got to get rid of that ball a little sooner. That's something that to me is a 0.0% concern, because it's something that normally is happening inside the Woody Hayes in January, and no one's around to see it, so therefore no one realizes it. But I think that's exactly what we watched play out there on the field.
And making things more difficult. The receivers got like a 30-yard, 25-yard head start, so they were already like downfield, and then they would start doing a little running. So it made the timing even a little bit more wonky. But he was just throwing to a spot, and then they would catch it there. So it would have been nice to see CJ Stroud, but it tells me that not only was this some load management, but they feel really, really good about him, because he's a guy who was, if you guys didn't know this, he's never thrown a pass in a college game before. And so it's true.
Is that true?
No, you can go look.
That feels like something that would have come up before now if that was actually true.
No, I have looked. I have researched, Tom. I research. And so if you've got a quarterback who is the guy in the lead, who's going to be your starting quarterback most likely, has never thrown a pass in a college game, needs all the reps you can possibly give him and then more, and yet you're not giving him all of those reps he could use, that tells me that they feel pretty good about where he is right now.
Yeah, and Ryan Day talked about, and this gave Jack and CJ or Kyle an opportunity to work with the ones. It's like, oh, so they haven't been working with the ones as much, eh? Is that what I'm meant to take away from that? Which is not really a surprise to anyone who has watched any of Ohio State's practice, because CJ Stroud has been repping first for pretty much everything going back to the spring. So, but I think that does, earlier in the week, Day talked about, Stroud having created some separation between him and Miller and McCord. I think that's just a little more confirmation that, yes, they want to have decisions on this stuff by Friday or so, end of this weekend. I have a pretty good sense that I know who the starting quarterback is going to be for Ohio State, and I think he had a little bit of a day off. Oh, we're about to have a special guest star. Let's see.
This is great. Love it.
We
love this show.
We have this could
need
be
a bingo card.
This could be like Gator Chomp Weekly, and we would have fewer Gators on this podcast than we do for some reason on Buckeye Weekly.
Are we talking about the quarterbacks?
Yeah, if we want to.
I think I'm starting to get this feeling by what we've heard and what we saw today, where Kyle McCord is moving past Jack Miller. When CJ Stroud was taking reps with the ones, so was Kyle McCord, and then they would go to the twos. That would be Jack Miller. So maybe that changes every day. Maybe that's what we'll get from Ryan Day. Yeah, they switch every day, and I'm sure he would say that. But and then it feels like if they're even, is McCord, if he's even, he's leaving with that upside that he has. But it feels like, I don't know that it's necessarily even anymore.
You think if he's even, he's going to transfer?
No, Tom. It's a different way of saying that. And I knew you were going to say that, and that's why I hesitated, but I thought, no, Tom won't do that to you.
He won't derail the podcast. Yes. No. Yeah, and I think we talked about that in one of the shows earlier this week, is like, if Jack Miller has a year of advantage over, of a head start on Kyle McCord, and he started fall camp probably ahead of Kyle McCord, and Kyle McCord is now caught up, that tells me that Kyle McCord's trajectory is moving up a lot faster than Jack Miller's, not CJ Stroud's. There's a lot of quarterbacks. Kyle McCord's picking things up faster than Jack Miller, or gaining ground faster than Jack Miller, which means ultimately, whether it's today or next week or October or December or next March, he's eventually going to be ahead of him. I think you're probably at this point, based on what we saw today, and you don't want to read too much into any one individual practice, I don't think it's next March. I think that might be, this week or next week or early in the season. By October, I think you're more than likely going to have Kyle McCord be the number 2 quarterback on this team. And yet, the first time a backup quarterback comes in, it may just be Jack Miller again, just to derail the entire... Well, and that's you go back to last year, who was the first backup quarterback to play in the Nebraska game. It was Jack Miller, not CJ Stroud, and everyone went, what does this mean? And it was like, well...
just messing with you, man.
Yeah, I think we all ended up in the same spot that we were all expecting to end up last summer, and but everyone's still here, so
yeah. So let's talk about the running backs, because we finally got to see TreVeyon Henderson in action, and I don't know if Ohio State has any other running backs, but I know they have him, and he's really, really good, and I don't think they need anybody else. They can just give him the ball 25 times, and with those 2,000 yards that he will accumulate, if they can throw the ball just a little, maybe they can have other people win awards, and they can put those awards next to TreVeyon Henderson's Heisman this year.
Maybe. They don't typically give the Heisman to a running back these days. Not all that often, so.
But if he's a freshman, that makes him special. So makes him new, makes him shiny, makes him different, like a quarterback.
Okay. Well,
plus, he's going to rush for as many yards as a quarterback throws for.
Okay. So yes, I will stipulate if TreVeyon Henderson puts up a 4,000-yard rushing season, he will win the Heisman Trophy.
That's what I'm saying.
I would even care about the Heisman Trophy if he puts up a 4,000-yard season. I suspect that he will not, and therefore I will not. But he is someone who you keep hearing the same. Everyone you talk to, everyone on our site, everyone on our staff, you're all talking to different people, and they're all hearing the same names. And when everybody's talking about someone, it's like, okay, this means something. This is something that you're really seeing something here. You keep hearing about TreVeyon Henderson, he's busting 60, 70-yard touchdowns every single day. Like, that's not normal. That is not you're not hearing that about, it's not, 3 different running backs are busting 70-yard touchdowns every day. That means there's a problem with the defense, probably. If it's one guy's doing it, it's like, okay, there's something with that guy. And Tony Alford talked about he's just got a little wiggle. And that's all. The running backs are a little bit different. Master Teague does not necessarily have a wiggle. TreVeyon Henderson has that little wiggle, which Tony Alford said, he can just kind of wiggle, and then he's quick. He's got that wiggle to kind of get you a little off balance, and then the burst to get past you, and then that's what turns it into a big play. And he said he just gets defenders off balance, and that's all it takes. And that's something where he's, that's the thing where if you have the burst and you have the kind of the make you miss, that's what turns you into a very big play back and turns you into a 4,000-yard a season rusher. And
if the defense is already off balance, then he can also run over them. And he's a physical guy, too. He's not just the scat back who's trying to avoid being tackled. I talked to Master Teague today, and he mentioned that he wanted to improve his vision. He's improved his vision. He's worked on improving his agility, which were things he wasn't able to do last year because the way practice went and the pandemic, and we all know things were very limited. He says he feels good. He said that last year, but as we know, the further away you get from an Achilles injury, the better you look. He's worked on his vision. He's worked on this and that, and he's also being pushed by other guys. So I would expect, and we will see the best version of Master Teague this year. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means in terms of, it's still Mayan Williams, Master Teague, and TreVeyon Henderson in some order. I don't know if the best version of Master Teague is able to get 16 carries while those other 2 guys share 16, or if he's one of the 2 guys sharing 8, because I feel like the other 2 guys have very high ceilings as well, and Master Teague is going to have to continue to raise his, but that's what he's trying to do. That's what he's been working towards.
Yeah, and this may be a little bit of the Kyle McCord, Jack Miller conversation all over again, where if you've got a guy who's a couple of years behind you in seniority, who's already like in that conversation with you, if he continues to grow and get better at pass blocking and get better at catching passes, because that was TreVeyon Henderson did not do a lot of receiving in high school, so that's something he kind of has to work with, and Tony Alford said that's just reps. That's just, you got to be out there after practice with the jugs gun. Like, it's just, there's no other substitution. It's not like you can just watch a YouTube clip and it's like, oh now I know how to catch. Okay, good.
It's
all
like changing
set.
your oil.
Exactly. Yeah, and so there's a little bit of rep stuff that he's still got to get going with, and he's still probably got some some pass blocking kind of stuff and all the ancillary stuff that goes along with being a running back, other than just taking the football and running towards the part of the field that's painted red. But
the boring stuff.
The boring stuff, exactly. The boring stuff that the coaches continue to insist is important for whatever reason. Whatever. If he's already sort of near that Master Teague level, then ultimately you would sort of expect him to end up above there. Does that happen for the Minnesota game? Does that happen for the Penn State game? Does it happen for the Michigan game? We'll find out. But my expectation there is he's going to see more and more carries as the season goes along.
We had one person say, Tony, please stop with the over-unders to Tom. Tom, over-under.
Over-under on the number of over-unders we're going to do on this show. As a result of that, 3.5. Over.
Number of starts for TreVeyon Henderson this year is, I don't want to go 0.5 because that's very low. I'll go 1.5.
Over.
Really? Okay.
Over.
If I go 3.5,
Like, you don't get to. We had someone from another site try and do this. It was like over under 0.5. I said over, and he goes, okay, 1.5. I'm like, no, you don't get to change it
but
now.
the line raises as people bet on it, and you have bet on it, so the line goes up. But, okay, you got me there. So we will move on to Mayan Williams, talk to him a little bit. The most important thing I think we need to get out of this is somebody asked him about the meatball nickname, and he said he does not like it. And I've tried to tell people this on Twitter, tried to tell people this on the Ask the Insiders message board, and just because the people like it doesn't mean he likes it. He likes the pork chop nickname that was given to him by Baron Browning last year. And when you get a nickname that is a term of endearment, then you understand why he would like that, as opposed to meatball, and which is based on the appearance or whatever. He's just this round little thing. He's not a round little thing, but you get the idea. You can see why. I see why they would call him meatball, but he doesn't like it. So I think you should stop and then call him by his preferred nickname, pork chop or chop for short, which would be the affinity version. Like, yes, this is the shortened, familiarized version of the nickname. Or you could call it Mayan, Mr. Williams if you're nasty. Just no more meatball.
Can you do the Jason Garrett? Can I call him Coach? Is that a thing? Can I do that? No. One thing that speaking of meatballs and Mayan Williams, one thing he said was I didn't say speaking of meatball Mayan Williams, okay. Meatballs and Mayan Williams. It's a transition, Tony.
We'll see.
Once we start doing these podcasts a little more frequently, maybe you'll pick up on my brilliant transitions like that.
It does not feel like much of a transition right now.
Speaking of meatballs and Mayan Williams, he talked about the fact that he weighs about 10 pounds less than he did this time last year. And, that's just a little bit of quickness. It's not like he's lost muscle. That's just, he has changed his diet. He's slimmed down a little bit, just lost a little bit of the, you go back to the pictures of him checking in on last June and did not look like, it was like, that guy knows where the gym is. Like, I'm pretty sure he's worked out at least twice before this summer. So, he's never exactly been what you'd call doughy, but he has dropped about 10 pounds, and he said one of the big things he did to do that was he stopped eating red meat. So there's another reason why you probably shouldn't call him meatball, because he doesn't eat meat. He doesn't eat red meat. He said he's mostly eating just chicken right now, which is not a pork chop. I didn't think to ask him about pork chops, but...
Well, that's the other white meat.
It is the other white meat. He's trying to change his diet. He's lost weight. TreVeyon Henderson has talked about gaining weight. It's just... No one's weight is like exactly the same. Everyone is either gaining weight or losing weight here. No one is exactly the same as they were last year, but they're a little bit strategic with that, and that was always Mayan Williams' thing. If the strength was there, the run you over has always been there with him. If he's a little bit quicker, if he can just just that little extra bit of burst, that little extra bit of quickness, that's going to help him on the field this fall.
Well, and he was a guy who weighed even more in high school, where he was in the 230s, 240s, something like that. And I think one of the reasons why he didn't have as many offers as maybe he would have liked is because he wasn't as light as he should have been, as he is now, and you're seeing the results of that. Receivers, Tom, these receivers, I know you are a detractor. I think they're going to be pretty good. And one of the reasons I think this, not just because of the two All-Americans and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who are fine and taking things, they're doing well, but Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison continue to be everything they were advertised as, although I will say Marvin Harrison is more than he was advertised as. Emeka Egbuka certainly looks like the number one receiver in the 2021 class. Marvin Harrison might be 1A or 1B. I'm not sure if Egbuka is 1A or 1B, but those two guys are going to be in the rotation. They're going to play. They're going to make plays. And pretty soon you're going to see Garrett Wilson on the bench and Chris Olave on the bench.
I like the fact that you went through a whole thing on the receivers. Did mention Jackson Smith and Jigba once. Now, unlike Tony, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba might be a good player as well. I mean, I'm withholding judgment a little bit, but...
The three names thing kind of worries me.
Jonathan Taylor-Thomas never worked out as a wide receiver for Wisconsin back in the day. So, I think you've got two guys there who are already, the two true freshmen, Harrison, Egbuka, who are already, just look at them on the field, and it's like they were going against the second team defense a bunch, and they were when they're going against the first team defense, Cam Brown and Seven Banks weren't out there. So it's not, you're not going against the number one Ohio State corners. And Egbuka's in the slot, so he's not going against the outside corners either way. But every time Egbuka's out there, I'm just watching him, and he's just constantly running free over the free, and like twirling like Julie Andrews through the meadow in The Sound of Music, just like free as a bird, wide open across the middle, and catches it and runs for 1,000,000 yards. And Marvin Harrison, everything they throw towards him, he just catches. He just catches everything. It's crazy, and it's not all perfect throws. It's adjustments.
No, yeah.
It's just, that ball's behind. Got it. That ball's ahead. Got it. Down low. Got it. Way up high. Got it. He catches everything. And those are two more guys who. And I will apologize if the wind is the wind is kicking up here. We strategically placed ourselves to avoid the wind, and then the wind has changed direction because. While you may love this podcast, dear listener, nature clearly hates us. This is a season where there's going to be opportunities for those guys to play. You've had enough guys transfer out that you've got. Is it trained nature? I don't know. You've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Chris Olave, you've got Jackson Smith and Jigba, you've got Julian Fleming, but then there's a couple spots that are open. Boy, those two guys sure look like they're ready to contribute, ready to not just be like, well, they're going to take some snaps, like immediate impact, like first game. If I tell you Emeka Egbuka has 75 yards receiving and a touchdown, do you go, come on, that's crazy?
Not at all. Not at all. And it may just be 2 catches.
Yeah.
There may not be a lot of targets, but these guys are all, including the seniors and the juniors, they're bad ball catchers. And when you've got a brand new quarterback, that's a really good thing to have, and they're all across the board. We know what Jackson Smith and Jigba can do. We know what Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave can do. We've been seeing what these other 2 guys out there can do. The question now is can Julian Fleming do the same thing? Can he be somebody that rounds out that top 6? And I think he's that number 4 guy right now in terms of he's the veteran of the backups. And being a sophomore, did get a start last year in the Big Ten championship game, but can he continue to grow? And he's healthy now, so that's going to help. Offensive line, Thayer Munford is still out. Ryan Day said he will be back practicing soon. I know when we saw him standing on the field again, he's out there with the guys, but to just see him standing out there in a hat, it's concerning, and you would certainly be feeling better about the situation if he was practicing, especially with the changes that they're trying to make with the offensive line. The good news is he, according to Day, if Day is being honest with us, Thayer Munford will be back out there, and then by the end of the week with that Saturday scrimmage, that's going to tell them what they're going to do with the offensive line. Now, I wonder, because they're not able to use that offensive line, are they using that scrimmage to confirm, or like if they don't see what they want, is it then, okay, NPF, Nick Petit-Frere back to right tackle, Thayer Munford to left, Matt Jones at left guard, and Dwand, I'm sorry, it just didn't work out.
That's going to be hard because you've now spent, this was 2 full weeks ago now, and you've got a couple more practices where you're presumably keeping those guys together, because that's what it was today. It was Nick Petit-Frere at left tackle, Matt Jones at left guard in place of Thayer Munford, Harry Miller at center, Paris Johnson at right guard, and Dwan Jones at right tackle. So you've now done 2 weeks of this, and that's a lot of time to sink into something if you're not really, really sure what you're going to do. And that was the line the whole time. It wasn't like they were shuffling things around. Oh, we're just trying some stuff. That has been the thing for a couple weeks now. I think they're almost like committed at this point to that.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of, is it those 5 guys, or does Thayer Munford swap in for Matt Jones? I think it's going to be very difficult for them. With just a week of preparation, we talked. We can talk about the importance of having 5 guys together and working together, and how much they've lost by not having Thayer Munford out there this week. But if you go back to the other way, then it's 5 guys who have really not had a ton of time together, especially this fall. Yeah. That's going to be a challenge for Paris Johnson and Nick Petit-Frere have not been working together now for the last couple weeks. They're both, this is a new thing with them being on the same side of the line. I think you're going to run into an issue with just not having enough time before the Minnesota game to make that kind of change. Now, if Thayer Munford's healthy, it sure seems like they've seen enough that they feel good about it. So now it's just a matter of, is Thayer Munford healthy? And the last time we were in here 2 days ago, Monday, whenever it was, I remember saying, like, it's not a concern to me yet, but if it lingers a while, it gets concerning. Something about being out here and seeing him standing there in a baseball cap was just kind of like, yeah, that's not great. That's, just like walking out here, he was one of the first people I saw wearing this red baseball cap. It was just like, oh boy, that is not great. Maybe that's just a weird, psychological thing where if you don't see it, it doesn't really, it doesn't really count. He's not really out because, you're hiding your head under the covers. Like, if the monsters can't see me, I can't, they can't, then if I can't see them, they can't see me. If I don't see Thayer Munford not practicing, then is he really not practicing? Like, well, and then there he is not practicing. It's like, yeah, that's a concern. And I mean, we'll find out this weekend whether he was in the scrimmage, whether he was in practice on Friday. Ask me again on Sunday once we know the answer to that question, and I'll tell you how much of a concern I have for the offensive line.
And I know people will be asking, Harry Miller has been snapping fine, haven't seen a bad snap yet, so that was one half of football. Mm-hmm. The second half of football was good back in Michigan State. So just allow that to sink in, that he's snapping the ball. That is not how he will be defined as an Ohio State Buckeye, and he looked fine today. We could go through defensive line, linebacker, secondary, we probably will in some sort, but you get a pretty good idea of what the offense is going to look like. Mm-hmm. Defensively, the way they play, rotate the ones and the twos, and the guys who are out there with the ones and who's out there with the twos, it almost feels like they've got, 20 starters. Mm-hmm. Just because of the way different guys would be. Like, at one point, Denzel Burke, corners, repping with the ones. They were without 3 inside linebackers today, with no Dallas Gant, no Tommy Eichenberg, and no Cody Simon. So you had a walk-on middle linebacker, Ryan Batch, in the game.
With the ones?
With the ones, yes. And so that gives you an idea of, it's hard to put together 2 deep for us at this point because this is the only practice we've seen. And I think we could guess it relatively accurately, but when somebody is saying, hey, who's out there with the ones, who's the starting this, who's the starting that, and it's like, you're trying to watch that, and I'm jotting stuff down on in my notebook, and maybe you said it, maybe somebody else said it today, like, each time the ones would come out, it would be a different group of ones.
Yeah, and I think we came into this thinking, well, we'll get to watch a whole practice. We'll have a very good sense for what the depth chart really looks like heading into the second scrimmage. And then, I'm just taking notes in my phone, and it's just like, wow, this is interesting. Look, Jack Sawyer's with the ones. Look, JT Tuimoloau is with the twos. And then you look, it's like, hey, where'd Zach Harrison go? Where's Tyreek Smith? Okay, well, they're not out there right now. Okay, well, then that explains why guys who I thought were with the 2s and 3s were with the 1s and 2s. Like, I've solved the mystery. Great work, everyone. Let's go get lunch. Same thing with the offensive line. You've got guys, all 3 different running backs were repping with the ones at various points. It's just, either they're doing it to keep everyone happy and keep everyone thinking that they have a chance to be with the ones, or they really don't know, or you want to make sure they give people enough chances before you get into game week to really know, and then you make a final decision. But yeah, I kind of about halfway through just kind of threw my hands up and went, well, I guess we'll find out later, because we have a lot more information than we had, but how much of this information is really meaningful, how much isn't? I feel like we saw Polier now Teote kind of in that Sam spot. Yeah. We saw
a Sam spot, which is news in itself.
Which is news in and of itself, and that's still probably going to be a mixture of a Sam spot and also a Craig Young kind of bullet, and also a Court Williams or Ronnie Hickman type of bullet. And
Ronnie Hickman was out there with the ones instead of Craig Young.
Right.
So
yeah. So you kind of, but Craig Young was out there. It wasn't like he wasn't out there. So there's still some mixing and matching going on, and in your head while you're driving here this morning, you're like, wow, we're going to know so much. And it's just, it feels like every time it's like that. It's like, finally we will have the Rosetta Stone to understand the entire Ohio State depth chart and where everyone's going to be and possibly what scheme they're going to run. And you watch for an hour and you're just kind of like, yeah, That was interesting. And you come away with a lot of takeaways on individual players, much more so than you do like team on the whole or depth chart kind of stuff.
Let's talk about one of those individual players. Denzel Burke, freshman cornerback, had his black stripe removed. We may have heard his name over the loudspeaker more than anybody else. Had a couple pass breakups, was, as I said, at times repping with the ones, and just continues to make plays, do well. He was one of the first guys Ryan Day talked about back in the spring about making plays, even though he was still like not ready fully healed with, I think, a shoulder or something, and yet was still out there making plays, and he's just continued that. He is every bit of the natural that Matt Barnes talked about in the spring, and now he's making plays. He's out there. We saw DeMario McCall out there with the ones. Seven Banks is with the twos, but again, this is another part of don't read into any of that.
Yeah, I don't think Seven Banks is the fifth best corner on this team. That's
right.
My suspicion.
And the amazing thing is, so Cameron Brown wasn't out there, and at one point during practice, I'm like, right now with no Cameron Brown, Ryan Watts is the number 5 corner. And that doesn't include, and I think the two freshmen, or the two other freshmen, J.K. Johnson and Jordan Hancock, were behind him. And just the sheer numbers that they have at corner right now, if everybody is healthy, which they expect everybody will be fine, is you can understand why Ryan Day says he sleeps well at night, and he's much happier with the defense, feels good about the secondary, because if Ryan Watts is your 5th or 6th best corner in terms of where he's repping today, and that's, we don't have a lot to go on, but that's some information we have to go on. And he could very well, in the spring, we figured after the spring and going into the summer, we thought he might be the number 3 or number 2 corner. So there's a wide range there of guys who can play, and they can turn to whatever they want.
And it's a variety of guys. You've got, Denzel Burke is not, he's not a tiny guy, but he's not Ryan Watts' height, but he's, maybe the shorter, shiftier, like I think of him more as like an inside guy maybe. And Ryan Watts is like the big, tall outside guy. You're gonna need both of those body types at some point this season. And this may be a little bit of a confirmation bias thing, but when I see something like Ryan Watts is 5th without Cameron Brown, without Seven Banks, I tend to want to write that off because that goes exceptionally against everything else I've seen and kind of heard this fall. I don't think that that's really where he is in the pecking order, but sometimes they're just repping guys, I don't think Ryan Batch is necessarily going to be the starting inside linebacker for Ohio State. I think that's probably a reasonably safe thing to guess for the Minnesota game. You kind of have to, there's a little bit of an art form to determining what is meaningful and what isn't meaningful. That wasn't super meaningful. It's like interesting to me, but it wasn't super meaningful.
I don't think he's the number 5 or number 6 corner. I think he's going to play.
Yeah, and to your point about Denzel Burke, you're right. I should get full credit for picking him to be the next Buckeye to lose his black stripe when we did that show in the spring, because with the shoulder injury, that kind of held him back artificially. Now that he's healthy, you're seeing him out there ahead of, getting talked about ahead of a lot of the other guys who have lost their black stripe. So I think, do I deserve full credit? Yes. Do I deserve more than full credit? Possibly. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to take more than I deserve. So I'll just say full credit, maybe a little bit of extra respect for nailing that prediction exactly right, even though, technically the order was not what it was.
Right, no. And I've said your best quality is your humility and your willingness to take criticism and admit when you're wrong.
One of my many, 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 many outstanding qualities is my humility, yes.
Yeah, so that's good for you, and not so much good for everybody else. Anything else? I mentioned the 3 linebackers. We did see, as you said, Palaie Naoteote at the Sam with, and I forget, Taraji Mitchell was in there at the will, and Batch was in there. And also in that same lineup, I believe, Court Williams was in there. So it was maybe a little bit of a 4-4.
3.5, a 4, 3.5, 3.5 defense.
Something like that. And they're just moving guys around, and Bryson Shaw was with the ones, Josh Proctor was with the ones. They're just getting guys experienced reps, and it is almost like breaking a code. You can't read, if you try to read the actual letters and symbols from the Zodiac Killer, it doesn't really turn, it's not really words. So you gotta know what you're reading and read it the correct way. And it's, some of it's easy, some of it's hard.
And we have not talked about special teams yet, so we should mention they did run a little bit of kickoff return first team kickoff return. Tony, who was out there with the first team kickoff return?
Freshman running back TreVeyon Henderson. So maybe I should have said 4,000 yards from like all-purpose yards instead of just rushing.
Yeah, that's much more realistic. You're right. And it was TreVeyon Henderson and it was Emeka Egbuka. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, those are two guys who, they're going to want to get the ball in their hands. Those are two guys who, they've got the speed, they've got the make you miss, they've got all the stuff you'd want out of a kick returner. And maybe they're standing back there and just watching the ball sail over their head every time. That is a possibility. I don't think teams are going to want to kick to TreVeyon Henderson, but you put him out there, you give him an opportunity, and maybe that turns into something at some point this season.
Well, I think it was yesterday when I said Ohio State is kind of doing the video game thing by putting guys where people playing video games would put them. Those are the two guys you would put back there. If this was your season with Ohio State football and NCAA football, you're going to put TreVeyon Henderson as your kick returner. And when they said KOR ones, it was TreVeyon Henderson who stepped right up. And Parker Fleming may have denied it last week, but maybe he has taken over the job this week, or maybe they're just rotating guys through.
Yes, this is yet again I mean, they didn't have anyone else back there. They didn't have, and do you want to have a Garrett Wilson back there or a Chris Olave back there? Like, maybe not. I mean, that's a spot where you're more likely to get hurt on kickoff returns than basically any other play. So, do you want to keep maybe you want to keep those guys healthy? And so, I mean, there is reason to think there might be something there to the fact that those guys are back there. But yeah, when those are the two guys who are back there, when they're doing first team kickoff return, it's like, okay, it wasn't like they did another 2 or 3 rounds of it and did other people back there. It was like, we saw them do kickoff return the entirety of kickoff return practice today, and those are the guys back there.
Yep. So I think that'll do it. Have we covered everything? Anything else?
I think we've covered all of it, and if we missed anything, we can talk about it on tomorrow morning's episode of the Morning Scoop.
Perfect. Look for that. So we want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. BuckeyeScoop.com is where you can find all of stuff like this and more stuff like this, especially on the Ask the Insiders board, where every single day we've got practice updates from the inside. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting. You'll find out about all kinds of guys who are stepping up, doing well. All the questions you're asking are pretty much being answered on the Ask the Insiders message board every day. And also check out youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop for videos like this. High school football is starting up this weekend. We're going to be out at all games. Not all games. We're all going to be out at games, a bunch of games. So we'll have 5 or 6 games, highlights, recruits, prospects, videos, interviews, all sorts of stuff like that. And I think, Tom, the cicadas are playing us off right now. They're giving us the wrap it up sign. So we will go ahead and do that. We will talk to you guys later.